Good morning if you're in anywhere in the US, I guess. So today we're going to take just a slightly different spin on what I normally talk about. And somebody offered me a term because if you've listened to any of my lives, or if you've seen my videos, or if you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that my tagline is when your MVP is an ASS. And somebody was saying that might be a little harsh. And another term that somebody brought up is toxic rock stars, which I think is pretty good. So we're going to go with that for today. And I did some research just quickly because this came up yesterday, and found a Harvard Business Review article about toxic rock stars. And that's a great term for the folks who in your organization are killing it when it comes to producing results. There was in this article, I read a Harvard Business Review article. Let's first talk about the cost of this. Well, I'm going to go back and forth here a little bit because I didn't detail out this outline as much as I probably could have, but I've got so many ideas that I do want to share. What does this look like? Part of this may surprise you, and I've brought this up before. When you think a toxic culture, when you think a toxic rock star, you may think that, and this is all very true. So there's two ways that this is manifest. You have the person's behavior, and it could be that they yell at people. It could be that they're demeaning. It could be that they micromanage. It could be that they treat equals as subordinates. It could be that they, what else? I mean, there's all sorts of things. It can create overt conflict in companies. It can create antagonism, defensiveness, people shutting down. And what might surprise you is how leadership may see that things seem okay. People are so agreeable. People are so nice. People are, really wanting to keep things running smoothly. And so they don't say anything. And oftentimes, you have what I've talked about before on these lives as cordial hypocrisy. You have people feigning nice when really they disagree, when really they don't approve, when really they've identified a risk, when really they think they know that a project may fail, but they're not going to say anything. They're going to praise the person who's being the bully, who's the toxic person in the room. They are going to praise them. They are going to agree. And then outside the room, a completely different story. And with so much of when you have a remote culture, when you have a remote workforce, sometimes it might be harder to get your finger on the pulse of the culture because so much of it is happening behind the scenes on Teams or on private phone calls, which can still happen when you're in the office. And it's a little bit easier to spot when you're in the office. Not that I'm promoting being in the office. I'm just saying you have to work harder as a leader to know what's happening amongst the teams of this toxic rock star. And in this article, it talked about so many women, and in particular, I'm going to share women of color are more impacted by this than other people. And a lot of people are impacted by this, a lot. I mean, this is a $50 million issue for US companies. That's what Harvard Business Review estimates. Almost $50 billion is what it costs when you have a toxic culture. And a toxic culture doesn't always have to look very overtly like conflict and dis and people yelling or people being defensive and people being demeaning and all of these things. It can look like a very nice culture. But when you don't have healthy conflict, when people are being nice because they're either afraid of someone, they're afraid of the consequences of speaking up or speaking out. In the article, it talked about a woman who was a peer to someone and was assigned to a very prominent account. And with this peer, the peer was a male, a white male. The other leader was a woman of color, and the male was 10 years her senior, and he treated her like a subordinate, and he made her do all of the legwork and even let her know outwardly that he could influence her pay and her performance review, and that he knew how to play the politics. And he was, making demeaning comments. He yelled at his staff. He said racist things, and he'd been written up several times. And yet, because he was bringing in the dollars, because it's the behavior, or not the behavior, because it was the results that, he was delivering results, the company wouldn't act out. She all of a sudden, after a year of putting up with this, because after she was asked, after she asked some people just for some advice, they told her, "Oh gosh, no, do not say a word. It will kill your career. It will kill your career." And so she put up with it for a year. And finally, she just, in her integrity, said, "I cannot put up with this anymore." And she was labeled as difficult. She was told she needed to learn how to get along with people better. That's ridiculous. What leaders, senior leaders, CEOs, I am talking to you. You need to stop coddling these toxic rock stars. You need to hold them accountable. You need to get them a coach. You need to provide them with the resources they need to shift their behavior, because it's killing your company. You are losing very valuable people. This one rock star who's bringing in the money, there are a lot of other ones out there who can bring in the money, who don't, I'm just going to say it, shit all over people, who don't yell at people, who don't make them feel small, who don't degrade people, who don't discount their input, who don't take their input as their own, their ideas as their own, who don't shut people down, there are people who will build up their team, who will create an environment of collaboration and healthy conflict even. When you have cordial hypocrisy, cordial hypocrisy, again, is people feigning nice. They're being cordial, they're being nice, they're being agreeable. They might even provide a lot of praise for the person who's being the toxic bully, because they are afraid of them. They are afraid of what that person could do to their career. They are afraid of losing their job, because if they speak out, this needs to stop. If you have someone like this in your organization, let's act now. If you've got some budget left, we're here. It's, what day is today? Oh, November 1st, my sister's birthday. November 1st. You've got 2 months here between now and the end of the year. Let's take November, December, and January. I've got a special that will help these leaders get into and start 2024 and create a completely different culture in your organization, in that team, and really help to push some of that toxic rock star syndrome out of the organization and start to turn into more trust, more healthy conflict. And that's how you get to accountability. That's how you get to commitment and accountability. That's how you get to results that are going to skyrocket your organization. You may think this rock star is bringing in the money. You don't realize how much you're limiting your organization because of the impact it's having on everybody else in the organization. You're not getting your best from all those people. You're not getting the best ideas. You're not solving all the problems in the most creative and unique and outstanding ways. You're getting, and when they're in that fight, flight, or freeze, and that's what happens when there's a toxic rock star, you are creating a stress response in the rest of the organization. And that stress response, that fight, flight, or freeze, is creating in their brain the inability to access their full prefrontal cortex. Because fight, flight, or freeze, the amygdala response, it is efficient. All it wants to focus on is what it's always done. Creativity goes to the wayside. Innovation goes to the wayside. Let me help these leaders. This is what I do. This is what I specialize in. I've got a Q4 special. I don't normally work with people for 3 months. I usually only work with them for a minimum of 6 months. So 3 months, I will work with your leader, November, December, January, and if, depending on when we connect, might go into early February. Let's get them to shift, to start to make that shift, to ease up on some of that control, to ease up on some of the forcefulness, and help them become force multipliers. Force multiplier means that they're able to take the intelligence and the creativity and the force of nature that their team is and multiply that with their creativity, uniqueness, and power, with power to instead of power over. DM me, let's chat. Let's talk about how we can shift either the very outwardly toxic rock star impact that's going on in your organization, or the more insidious cordial hypocrisy that might be going on because of a toxic rock star. I'd love to hear from you. Please leave in the comments if you are watching this on replay, just put replay. Love to hear your thoughts on this and what your perspective is and how we can help these leaders, because none of them show up to work saying, I'm going to be the jerk. They don't wake up in the morning saying, I'm going to be a jerk today, or I'm going to create some toxicity in the organization. Oftentimes it's just habits and reactions that are so ingrained they don't know how to shift it. And some of them don't think they need to, and that's up to the senior leadership, CEO and senior leadership, to create and to say and to create the values and to live by those values and to live by and hold people accountable for those behaviors. What are the actual behaviors that show that you're living the values? Being a toxic rock star, I can't imagine has anything to do with any of the values in any of the companies that I've ever talked to. Just saying. So please reach out, comment in the video, and let me know if you're watching this on replay. If you've got any ideas or comments about how to help with toxic rock stars, we'll be covering that more next week, and I've covered that in past sessions. And I do have a free resource coming out soon that'll just give you some first steps to go in that direction. But I'll let you know when that's available. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.